everybody. Welcome to the Kim Iverson Show. Thank you so much for joining me. This is a live stream that is going to actually be launching. This show is going to be launching next week, Monday through Friday, exclusively to Rumble. You will find this show with clips that are going to be aired on other platforms, including YouTube, Rokfin, and whatnot. We're going to be posting those clips, or I should say segments. They'll be full segments, so you'll get the full thing. You just won't get the full show. You'll get the full piece of the show. Those segments are going to be posted after the Rumble live stream. And again, this is launching next week, Monday through Friday. We're all very excited here. This is sort of a test live stream that you're watching right now, and we're still working out the kinks, so you might see some throughout the broadcast tonight. But that's okay. We're here. We're doing it. And today was kind of not to lie to you guys. Today was a little bit of a scramble. We were working on some things, and I ended up having kind of a personal emergency, so I had to step away for a while. And now we're back, and we are doing the show live. So we're trying to work things out. So what I want you guys to do, though, before we get into it, I've got a great show for you. We're going to be talking about George Santos and all of his lies, and why he lied. You know, that's the big important thing. People aren't really questioning why George Santos felt the need to lie. We're going to be getting into that because it has a lot to do with, in my opinion, the establishment. So we're going to be talking about that. Also, we're going to be talking about China and COVID. They're having a massive wave. Many of us knew this was going to happen. They lifted the restrictions, and the next thing we knew, China was. Hold on one second. What is going on? What's the problem?
We'll be right back.
We're going to be right back. Apparently, we'll be right back. Okay, I think we're back, and I think maybe you guys can actually hear me a little bit better now. Sorry about that. We are doing a live test stream for this show. We are having a little bit of technical difficulties today. Before we went live, the system crashed right 10 minutes before the show was to start. And so then we rebooted everything, started up, and for whatever reason, the system isn't quite the way it was before it crashed. So we're hoping now that you can hear. Give me a thumbs up or somehow indicate in the chat that you can actually hear me just fine now. That would be really, really helpful. So, and I can't have that on, sorry, otherwise. Sorry guys, we're just having some technical difficulties, so you just have to bear with us right now. Okay, so I want to tell you guys about the new show that is going to be launching. This is still a test, thank God, right? But the show is actually starting live next week, Monday through Friday, beginning January 2nd on Rumble exclusively. There will be a 1-hour live stream show that happens, like I said, Monday through Friday. Next week it starts on Rumble exclusively. The clips, the segments from the show will be posted on outlets such as YouTube, Rokfin, and potentially others. So you'll get a clip a day from the live stream if you just insist on staying and watching it on a different platform other than Rumble. But if you want to see the entire live stream, the whole show that we put together for you every single night, then you'll want to head over to Rumble. You'll want to sign up and subscribe to my channel over there. And that is happening again, starting Monday, January 2nd on Rumble, and segments to be posted later, later on that day, maybe even the next day, to the other platforms. So for now, you are getting this live stream here. We might shut it down, though, halfway through here on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, the stream will get shut down and moved over to Rumble only for the last half of the show, and because we need to test out that feature, because that's what we will be doing every day next week. And again, this is a test. So what you're watching is a test. All right, today's show, we've got a great one for you talking about George Santos. He is the New York rep-elect from New York who is in hot water for lying. We're going to talk about his lies and explain who this guy is if you don't really know who he is and what the scandal is surrounding him. We're going to go over that, but also why he lied. You know, no one's really talking about the why he felt the need to lie. So we're going to be going over that as well today. China is having a major COVID crisis. Who didn't see this coming? You cannot lock down your way out of COVID. You cannot run away from a virus and hope it just disappears. The virus will eventually get you. And now China is experiencing that. We're going to be going over what is happening in China and what some of the critics are saying. And there's even some denials that anything is going on whatsoever in China. We're going to be going over that also. And the best, or maybe the worst, or is it the best? Conspiracy theories of 2022 that ended up not being conspiracy theories at all. We're going to be talking about that as well later in the show. That is all coming up. You are watching The Kim Iverson Show. Well, Republican House Rep-elect from New York, George Santos, is in hot water for being a big liar. So we're going to go over a bunch of his lies, but most importantly, we're going to talk about why he even felt the need to lie in the first place. Okay, so first of all, who is George Santos? Well, he's the first openly gay GOP person to be elected to Congress. He's 34. He ran for office unsuccessfully 2 years ago. He was recently elected to represent New York's 3rd Congressional District and is set to be sworn in January. So he's not actually in Congress just yet. That's why he's rep-elect. Now, after Santos won the election, the New York Times in December, middle of December, which is, you know, New York Times is a liberal outlet, and George Santos just became a Republican rep-elect from New York's 3rd Congressional District, probably something much to their dismay. So this liberal outlet, the New York Times, decides to do a deep dive into George Santos, into his past, and discovered that there were a lot of tall tales being told by George Santos on the campaign trail. So we're going to go over the list of what he lied about. But first, I just want to mention, you know, it's interesting that the New York Times would go over and do this piece on George Santos. Do you think they're doing these sorts of deep dives into any of the Democrats who win? Do you think if they find these sorts of these lies or tall tales or fibs or exaggerations, do you think that they actually harp on those and go after the person? Because we all know Joe Biden, for example, has told a lot of tall tales. He's told a lot of tall tales about the death of his wife and daughter, saying that it was a drunk driver who hit them, and it wasn't. He's lied about numerous things on the campaign trail, talking about, the laundry list with Joe Biden is long. I don't have them directly in front of me right at this moment, but does the New York Times do a deep dive trying to smear him, trying to get him to leave the campaign trail? No, of course not, but they do this to a GOP rep-elect. But nonetheless, George Santos did lie. He told a lot of lies. So we're going to go over them right now. First of all, work experience. In an interview with the New York Post on Monday, Santos admitted to misleading people about his work experience by claiming to have worked directly for Goldman Sachs and Citigroup. He explained that he had actually only done business with these firms through his work at Linkbridge, where he was vice president. So he apologized for using a poor choice of words and promised to be more clear in the future. But it's interesting he felt the need to even lie about working for Goldman Sachs directly, right? I mean, what type of campaign benefit do you think you get out of that for saying, oh, yeah, I directly work for these big Wall Street firms? I think that's going to say something towards what a person feels like they need to say, how they need to present themselves in order to win campaigns and in order to win favor of maybe even the establishment of the GOP, or I'm sure Democrats have a similar situation, but not as prominent right this moment. You know, the Republicans are still very much kind of in that world, but they're slowly moving out of it. But, you know, why did he even feel like he needed to actually say that he worked directly for Goldman Sachs in order to get elected? Now, he also lied about his education. This one's maybe a little bit more understandable. You'd say, oh, yeah, no, I went to college, I got a degree and all these things. And it turns out he admitted in an interview with the New York Post on Monday that he had falsely claimed to have received a degree from Baruch College in 2010. He stated that he has not graduated from any institution of higher learning, and he apologized for embellishing his resume. Santos explained that he had made a mistake and that we do stupid things in life. When he was talking to WABC, which is a New York radio station, he was saying that in a separate interview, saying, well, okay, I did some stupid things. But he lied about a lot of things. It wasn't just his education. Now, he defended himself by acknowledging that many people exaggerate or twist the truth on their resumes, and implied that he was guilty of just doing the same, that he embellished, he exaggerated, that's what he was doing. Now, education, again, that's one of those things that maybe you could understand why you would say, oh, yeah, I graduated from this school, and maybe you didn't fully, technically, officially graduate. Maybe you were like a credit short or two. Like myself, I thought I graduated from college. I walked the line, shook the hand. My whole family was there, only to find out 6 months to 9 months later, the degree never showed up. I call the University of California, Davis, and say, oh, Kim, sorry about that. You're 1 credit short from graduating. By then, I gave up. I moved on. I was already in my career in radio, and I still to this day have not done that 1 credit in order to finish my degree. But maybe it was something like that. You know, he thought he graduated and he didn't. And it was just kind of a clerical error of the university where they told you could graduate. And then ultimately when they went and processed the credits, they find, oh, well, no, you know, it didn't really quite pan out that way. Maybe that's what happened. But it's interesting that in the GOP, he would feel like he would even need to lie about education. Again, it's this question, why did he need to do it? With education, you know, right now with the GOP, you've got a lot of narratives going on saying you don't even need college, that college is, you know, a big waste of time and energy and money. So why did he even feel like he needed to say that in order to win an election for the GOP? Maybe the GOP in New York things are a little bit different. Now, one big, and I think the funniest lie in this entire saga of lies from George Santos is he lied about his Jewish ancestry. So he said that he was Jewish. During his campaign, he had claimed to have Jewish heritage, and he had referred to himself as a proud American Jew in a campaign document obtained by the Forward. Now, his campaign had also stated that his maternal grandparents had escaped anti-Jewish persecution in Ukraine during World War II. However, in a recent interview with the New York Post, Santos denied ever claiming to be Jewish and stated that he identifies as Catholic. He then explained that he had referred to himself as Jew-ish. Not Jewish. I'm Jew-ish. I'm like Jewish. I'm similar to Jewish. I'm Jew-ish. feel like so many people could claim that at this point if you're going to make it that, if you're going to make that the claim. So he said that he learned about his maternal family's Jewish background, and because of that link to being Jewish, he's Jewish, not actually Jewish. That to me was the funniest lie that he told. But again, why did he feel like he needed to claim to be Jewish on the campaign trail in order to win favor with the GOP base or even with the GOP establishment that was helping fund his campaign? He also lied about his finances in real estate. Also, again, talking to the Post, Santos, he's, again, the congressman-elect for New York, stated in the third person that he does not own any real estate properties. This contradicts his previous claims during the campaign that he owned 13 properties. Again, why does he feel like he needs to say that? Why do you need to sound like a rich person working for Wall Street who's Jewish, who went to college? Why does he feel the need to say these things in order to win a GOP election or to be funded by the GOP establishment? But according to the New York Times, he didn't own any of those. He now says he owns none, and he's currently living with his sister. So felt the need to actually build himself up and look bigger, wealthier, better than he really was. And that's interesting because it's not really winning elections these days. People are looking for that more down-to-earth person that really resonates with the average people. People are looking for a for-the-people type candidate. They're not necessarily looking for these big ties to Wall Street and all sorts of other fancy things with 13 properties owned. Now, in an interview with City and State, he explained that his family owns property and that he helps them with bookkeeping, but that it's a family affair. So maybe his family has 13 properties. I think if you and I started counting all of the properties our cousins own and our grandparents own and our siblings own some houses, I guess then in that case, all of us probably own, 5, 10, 15, maybe even 20, depending on how big your family is, properties, right? He founded an animal rescue group, so he claimed. Turns out he didn't. The New York Times has questioned the validity of Santos's claim that he founded and ran an animal rescue group called Friends of Pets United, which was registered as a 501c3 charity. The IRS was unable to find any record of a charity by this name. According to the Times, Santos told City and State that he had worked on the nonprofit, but that he never claimed to fly solo on it. He stated that he was involved in tasks such as picking up poop, cleaning, recruiting volunteers, and promoting the group online. So he wasn't the founder of the group. It wasn't his group that he created, but he volunteered or worked for the group in some capacity. Now, here's where it gets kind of grim and shocking. He actually lied about his mother's death. Santos claimed that his mother died in the September 11th attacks, but apparently she didn't. According to the Post, quote, on his campaign website, Santos' team acknowledged that while Georgia's mother was in her office on the South Tower on September 11, 2001, when the horrific events of that day unfolded, she was not among the more than 2,700 people killed at the World Trade Center. She survived the tragic events on September 11th, but she passed away a few years later when she lost her battle to cancer, the campaign website reads. A short obituary confirmed that she died on December 23rd, 2016, one day after she celebrated her 54th birthday. The obituary incorrectly states that she was 64, so she was in her 50s. She died December 23rd of 2016, many, many years after the September 11th attacks. However, I'm going to maybe give George Santos a slight pass on this one, just a little bit. I'm not really sure of exactly what his statement was when he said that she died in the September 11th attacks. He kind of insinuated that she died from the attacks, not necessarily in the attacks. And we all now know that there's a lot of cancer that was attributed to many of the people who were involved, who were there, who were breathing in the debris, the smoke. There's a lot of health issues that have arisen after the September 11th attacks. So it is possible that her cancer was directly related to those attacks. Maybe, right? But we don't really know. Now, one claim he made was that he lost 4 employees in the Pulse nightclub shooting. In an interview with WNYC last month, Santos stated that 4 of his employees were killed in the Pulse nightclub shooting in Florida in 2016. However, when asked about this on WABC on Monday, Santos revised his statement saying that although the company did not directly employ any of the victims, it did have people who were in the process of being hired by the company at the time of the shooting, and that 4 of these individuals were killed in the shooting. The New York Times was unable to find any connection between the victims of the Pulse shooting and Santos's company. So these are all the many lies that he told. It wasn't just one or two or three or even five. It was many lies that were actually kind of big and definitely did embellish his story to make him seem like he was kind of larger than life. I mean, who loses 4 employees in the Pulse nightclub shooting happens to be a Ukrainian Jew who escaped World War II, or a descendant from Ukrainian Jews escaping the Holocaust of World War II, who also happened to work for Goldman Sachs, own 13 properties, gotten a college degree. I mean, the list goes on. But the big question is, why did George Santos feel the need to actually embellish his resume this way? Now, what is the reaction from the GOP? The GOP has been mostly silent about this. Marjorie Taylor Greene, however, is defending Santos, pointing out lies by Dems on social media. In a Twitter thread, she actually went on the defense for George, saying, George Santos lied about his resume and the left is demanding he resign. Ilhan Omar says she didn't marry her brother. She lied. Elizabeth Warren said she was Native American Indian. She lied. The left said George Floyd didn't die of a drug overdose. They lied. Dr. Rachel Levine says he's a woman. He lied. Adam Schiff said he had proof of Trump assassination, of Trump-Russian collusion. He lied. Eric Swalwell said he didn't have sex with a CCP spy. He lied. Fauci said the taxpayer-funded COVID-19 virus didn't come from the Wuhan lab. He lied. The science and medical experts said the taxpayer-funded COVID vaccines would stop COVID. They lied. They also said they are safe. They lied again. The Democrats, J6 committee, and media says Trump and U.S. Republicans organized an insurrection on January 6th. They lied. The left doesn't care about lying. The real reason they're attacking George Santos is that he is the first openly gay Republican elected, and they hate him for it. I'm glad George is being honest with his district now and look forward to seeing how George legislates and votes. So, Marjorie Taylor Greene has a good point. Why are they attacking George Santos now? Plenty of people do lie in politics, and certainly he's not the first. And as I mentioned before, the New York Times, a liberal outlet, of course they go after the first openly gay GOP rep-elect because it does counter their narrative. They don't like the fact that now gay men are running on the GOP ticket and winning. That goes against their narrative. So, yeah, they're picking on him, they're pointing him out, and I'm sure he's not the only one who's embellished his resume. If we started digging into most members of Congress, we'd probably find many of them lie. I think most of us know that many of them lie about a variety of things, maybe not about their backgrounds or how many properties they own, but they lie about other things, and that's kind of common, unfortunately, in politics. But nonetheless, the thing about George Santos is, you shouldn't be able to lie no matter which side of the aisle you're on and win yourself a seat in Congress. You should be called out for those lies. In fact, Democrats should be calling out the people, the members of their team on their side who've been lying. They should be calling them out. And they should be dragging them through the mud and saying, we demand you resign. And Republicans aren't quite doing that with George Santos. There's actually kind of a lot of silence on that side, regardless of the amount of lies that he's told. They're not really thrilled about it. Kevin McCarthy is unwilling to really open investigation into Santos, which means barring him actually resigning on his own, stepping aside on his own, he will be sworn into Congress January 3rd. The only way to maybe stop him is if there's some sort of measure that is taken in Congress where they actually force him to resign, but it takes the majority. Of course, Democrats would all be for it. It would just be a matter of whether or not the majority of Republicans would be for it as well. That would actually cause George Santos to have to step aside. Now, Kevin McCarthy doesn't actually want to go against the guy because Kevin McCarthy is hanging by a thread right now. He's barely able to make it as Speaker of the House. The GOP can't figure out who they're going to be putting in as Speaker, and Kevin McCarthy's hanging by a thread, and so he wants George Santos's vote. But Kevin McCarthy is establishment, and this is the real thing I want to get to about this. I want to actually play this clip of Matt Gaetz being interviewed by the Daily Caller. Now, this is about Kevin McCarthy and the establishment. It's not about George Santos, but it sort of ties into this, and I'll explain it after this clip.
I'm not voting for Kevin McCarthy for Speaker because I think he's just a shill of the establishment. I think that Kevin McCarthy is little more than a vessel through which lobbyists and special interests operate. And the reason most of my Republican colleagues are supporting him is because they benefit from the redistribution of lobbyist and special interest money through McCarthy to their campaign accounts. And the bottom line is that's not going to work anymore. We need someone like Jim Jordan as the Speaker of the House who can cast a vision and who has the trust and confidence of people across the spectrum in the House.
KJP said that the Republicans are up to border stunts. They're doing publicity stunts at the border.
Kevin McCarthy's at the border. What is his plan? What is he doing to help the situation that we're seeing? He goes down there and he does a political stunt like many Republicans do, but he actually is not putting forth a plan to help us deal with an issue that we're all seeing, that you all are reporting.
Do you think that's what McCarthy is doing when he goes down to the border? What I'm asking you is, do you think he has a plan for the border? Does McCarthy have a plan?
Well, the plan ought to be to impeach Mayorkas. And McCarthy was against that until he saw that he needed the votes of populist conservatives, and then all of a sudden has changed his tune. I don't believe that's sincere. I know we have a crisis on the border. We're going to be at the point where we have tens of thousands of people coming over each and every day, and we need a Republican Party willing to stand up to that. And actually, Paul Ryan, like that wing of the Republican Party, they believe in unchecked immigration because it lowers wages and it lowers labor costs for big business. And when Paul Ryan was pushing the pro-amnesty agenda through the Congress as the leader, well, Kevin McCarthy was right there by his side, not standing with us, not standing up for the real asylum changes, not standing up against the pathway to citizenship that some of the rhinos want. So I have not seen McCarthy fight enough on the border.
What went wrong in the midterms for Republicans? You guys won the House. A lot of people think that you guys underperformed. What do you think went wrong?
Well, I think it was a real mistake to have our own leadership playing in primaries and hurting us when we wanted to coalesce around candidates. I'll give you two quick examples. Caroline Leavitt in New Hampshire. McCarthy spent millions against her. She then was our nominee and lost a close race. Joe Kent in Washington State. McCarthy was against him, really shepherded millions of dollars in lobbyist and special interest money against him, and then he loses a very close race. So we did some of this to ourselves, and like the Commitment to America agenda was sort of a punchline in search of policy. We need the type of bold solutions we've been discussing: asylum reform, internal enforcement of our immigration laws, breaking up big tech, and conducting the investigations to expose where our government has been weaponized against our people.
All right, so Kevin McCarthy there, Matt Gaetz there calling out Kevin McCarthy, calling him an establishment shill, saying that, he's trying to play that he's for the people, he's trying to play that he's one of us, but the reality, a populist is what he's referring to, but in reality, he's establishment shill, and he's just pretending. Now, that ties into George Santos a bit, because George Santos, obviously, his lies, his numerous lies, really play into the establishment GOP, not populist base. He's not lying about being a populist the way maybe Kevin McCarthy was lying about it, but he's lying as an establishment shill, which is shocking that he felt like that would actually work. It's shocking it did work, to be honest with you. He did get elected, and maybe he was smarter than the rest of us when it comes to that. Maybe New York's 3rd Congressional District is still heavily establishment GOP. But really, George Santos should resign. The guy's lied over and over in order to get himself into Congress. He's clearly placating the establishment. He's playing to the establishment base. He's playing to the establishment wing of the GOP by claiming he has all these ties and he's wealthy and Jewish and all of these various different things that he felt like, for whatever reason, would put him more into the favor of the establishment GOP. And really, the guy should resign. He should step aside. What we're looking for is populists to come in from the left and the right to do what's best for the people, not for Wall Street. I don't want the candidate that thinks, well, I worked for Wall Street, so therefore I'm the right guy for the job. No, actually, that makes you very much the wrong guy for the job. So I'd be happy to see George Santos step aside, because he's in the mindset that he thinks that these are the things that the people want, and these are not the things that people want. Matt Gaetz is totally correct in this video. The people are looking for a populist, somebody who is for the people. And now the Republicans are in office. It doesn't matter matter if you're a Democrat or Republican or Libertarian or Green or totally and completely independent. The bottom line is we want Congress ran by people who at least are truly trying to represent the people. Whether they're representing maybe a different base than you agree with or not, at least they're for the actual people. And George Santos, I just don't get the feeling this guy really is. So, no big loss. Out with the guy. That's my opinion on it. All right, guys, we're going to take a little bit of a break here. You are watching The Kim Iverson Show. We're going to be exclusive to Rumble starting next week, Monday through Friday. We're going to be doing live streams, 1-hour live streams on Rumble, and that is where you could catch the show with segments being published to other platforms. Got a new little feature here that I want to try out with you guys while you're here watching. I want you to text in your thoughts. You can text into the show 325-CALL-KIM. That's 325. Let me give you the actual digits here. 325. Oh, I just had the digits. Let me, where did my 325, 225 5546. So it's 325-CALL-KIM, 325-225-5546. You can text into the show. The phone lines are not open for actual phone calls at this moment. They will be at some point. We've been testing out the system. We've been figuring out how to take live calls. We're getting there. It's really, really close. But right now what you could do is you can text into the show your thoughts. What do you think of George Santos? Would love to hear from you. Text into the show 325-225-5546. That's 325-225 or 325-CALL-KIM. Text in the show, give me your thoughts, and I will read them at the end of the show today. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back and talk the COVID crisis happening in China. Was it inevitable, or is it all a Western media narrative sham? That's coming right up. Welcome back to the show. Thanks, guys, for joining me. You're watching a test live stream of the new Kim Iverson show, which is rolling out exclusively to Rumble beginning next week, starting Monday through Friday. We're going to be doing these live streams every single day for 1 hour. So you'll want to be sure to go to my Rumble page and go ahead and get everything, get subscribed and everything. That is what you'll want to do. Oh, sorry. There we go. Can you guys hear me now? Sorry about that. A little bit lower. There we go. I'm just putting it back to where it was. All right, guys. Sorry about that. Thank you so much for joining me. Now that my mouth is moving and words are actually coming out that you can hear, you are watching a test live stream of the Kim Iverson show, which will be live starting next week on Rumble exclusively. Monday through Friday, there will be a 1 hour live stream. And the segments from that live stream are going to be aired on YouTube, Rokfin, and other platforms. Locals, we're going to be doing live after shows on Locals, so you'll definitely want to hit up my Locals community and subscribe there. You could be a follower for free on Locals, and you can watch those live after shows there as a follower for free. If you want to be a subscriber to the Locals community, a paid subscriber, that is when you can actually replay those live after shows after the show, after it's already aired. Plus, you get a lot of other things, some other benefits to being a Locals subscriber, not just follower. So you'll have to forgive some of the mistakes we're making tonight. We are having sort of we're doing a test run in a way very specifically in order to test to see where we need to do some improvements, where we need to work on some things for the live stream that rolls out beginning next week. So today I also had a little bit of my own personal emergency. I had a medical emergency in the family, so I had to step away and be at the hospital for a little while. Everything's fine, but I had to run off and do that. And we're just doing a lot of testing today. And I kind of said to the guys the team, before we started the show today, I said, all right, last night I said to them, we're going to pretend like shit hit the fan and we don't have a show, we're going to have to scramble to get it ready. And then, of course, today shit actually did hit the fan when I got a phone call. Then I needed to rush off to the hospital and whatnot. And so we're doing a test of what it would be like, because we've got to do a show Monday through Friday starting next week on Rumble. What would it be like if, things are in disarray? So here we are doing a show, hoping that you're still enjoying it. And we've got some great things to talk about for the remaining. We've only got about 15 minutes left before we got to shut it off, because Glenn Greenwald comes on at 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock Pacific, 7 o'clock Eastern. So we've got to shut this down in 15 minutes. So we're going to blow through these next couple of things because I really want to talk about these things with you. Also, please text your thoughts. I want to get to those at the end of the show. 325-CALL-KIM is how you can text your thoughts into the show. That's 325-CALL-KIM. Text me, tell me what you think. And when we get this live show up and running next week, we're going to be taking phone calls onto the show, which is going to be a lot of fun. So let's first talk about China's COVID crisis. So China's having a major surge of COVID. I want to read this to you. This is actually from CBS News. They're claiming here, many hospitals and funeral homes say they're being overwhelmed by a worsening COVID-19 outbreak in China, even as the government reports just a handful of new deaths from the virus. The surge in cases across China is drawing a response from other countries, including the U.S. Japan, India, South Korea, Taiwan, and Malaysia have already said they will require virus tests for visitors from China, and Japanese authorities have sharply restricted the number of flights to and from China. So they're having a major surge in China. We know they're having a record number of cases. We don't know how many deaths they're having. The government is very clear about the numbers of cases for the most part, of how many people have COVID in China. We know they're having record-breaking surge. They're not as clear about the number of deaths. They still say that, I believe they're saying that they've only had 7 deaths as of like a month ago still. So unclear on that front. They're saying that everything is fine, that they're dealing with it, that it is what it is. But we do know they're finally getting their big COVID wave, which we also know was kind of inevitable. You can't outrun a virus. That at some point, if you lock down, which is what happened here in the United States and around the world, when you lock down, you can sort of keep yourself from getting the virus for a short period of time. But then after a while, the virus is coming to get you. I mean, the minute you step outside of your house, you're going to end up with the virus. There's no real way around that. You can't stay inside until it just goes away. It's not going to just go away. Now, China, the reason why they're having their outbreak now is because they finally, after 3 years of this pandemic, started to lift some of their restrictions. So this was inevitable. On December 7th, the Central Chinese government announced a drastic overhaul of approach, rolling back lockdowns, testing, and allowing residents to isolate at home, effectively abandoning their zero COVID policy. So they abandoned it. There was a lot of protests. If you remember, there was a fire in a building. People were locked inside of it. There was some different conflicting reports on whether or not the people were locked in by the government because the building was under quarantine lockdown, or whether or not it was something else. But it really rose, it really shook a lot of people, and it made them feel like we just can't be locked down like this. We need to live our lives. And how long are we to be doing this zero COVID policy when the rest of the world has already gotten COVID? They're still circulating COVID. What are you going to do? The minute the Chinese people start traveling outside of China, they're at risk of catching COVID. You're going to start letting people into China. You're at risk of having COVID come in, because COVID is all around the world, and it was not stopped as much as people thought they could stop it by locking down or mandating everybody get the vaccine. So Europe, some of the Europeans, you've got Italy, like I said, you've also got the US, Japan, Taiwan, India, all saying we're going to test these Chinese travelers before they make it in. We want to make sure they're not bringing COVID with them. And the EU was urged by Italy to also do the same thing. And the EU said, why? I mean, this is like where things are starting to make sense. Finally, people are starting to make some sense in regards to this pandemic. The EU says, why? Why would we do that? We already have had COVID. Most everybody in Europe has been infected. They have some level of natural protection. And the COVID variants that are circulating around China aren't new. We already have them. They're circulating. So what good would it do to make these passengers fly in, test, quarantine? COVID is here. People have already had it. These strains are here. What's the point? That actually makes sense. I applaud the EU for actually finally waking up and making some sense. It's just a matter of time. I mean, everybody eventually with this pandemic is going to have to start waking up and making some sense. It's just a matter of when, how long does it take? Will it take, some people it was faster. Some people woke up early, right? And they said after a couple of months, wait a minute, this strategy isn't going to work. Some people it took a year. Some people it took 2 years. Some it's taking 3. Some it seems like it's never going to get through their thick skull that you cannot lock down forever. You can't wear a mask forever. You can't vaccine your way out of this when, 5 jabs, 6 jabs later, you're still getting COVID. It's not going to work. Now, some of the critics, what are they saying? The pro-lockdown COVIDians, right? We've got a lot of people on social media saying, well, they still did the right thing. This is what I'm seeing all over social. They did the right thing because now that they've opened up, they only have Omicron. So they were able to get away from the Delta wave. They were able to, outrun essentially, or hide away, we should say, from the more deadly strains of the virus. And now that they're opening up, they're just dealing with Omicron, which is known to be milder and less deadly. That may or may not be true, but again, somebody has to circulate those original alpha variants. Someone has to circulate the Delta variant, right? I mean, the reason why we have new variants is because they were able to circulate and they were able to mutate, or, they mutated for, I have to be careful on what I say here because we're on YouTube, still on YouTube, but that's why next week we're going to Rumble, and that's why we're going to the free speech platform so that I can actually speak pretty freely on what maybe caused mutations. I'm just going to say it like that, what caused the various different mutations that are around these days. Next week when we go to Rumble, we will be shutting off the stream to YouTube at a certain point in the show and just being exclusively on Rumble where we can actually say what we really want to say. But nonetheless, there was a lot that happened in order to get these mutations to go into effect. And that needed a population to be infected or exposed to the virus in some way. Mutations just don't happen typically on their own. They mutate through people being exposed to it somehow. So China, if the whole world, because the pro-COVIDian lockdowners are saying, well, or the pro-lockdown COVIDians, they're saying if we all would have done what China did, then by the time we opened up, we would just be dealing with Omicron. That's not the way it works. That's not the science. Of course, they don't follow the science, but that's not the science. That's not how it would have worked. So there was no, yes, everybody should be doing this. Of course, the critics of the lockdowns are saying, see, this is what we've told you was going to happen. We told you that the minute you open back up, you are going to get the virus. You cannot lock down until the virus just goes away. You cannot lock down for years and years and years and make your people suffer and expect that one day you'll get away with it. And, one day you'll get out and there'll be zero COVID. Now, some other people, the pro-lockdown COVIDians, I should say, are strangely pointing the finger at China and saying, well, the real reason they're having this surge now, it wasn't the fact that they lifted restrictions, because the rest of us are saying, see, we told you this was going to happen. They lifted restrictions, COVID was going to surge. And they say, no, it would have worked except their vaccines. It was their vaccines. Their Sinovac and their Sinopharm vaccines were the problem. It was that, right, because the mRNA vaccines here in the United States were so much better. Right, you're right. Once you took those vaccines, you did not get COVID. You did not spread COVID. You did not get sick from COVID. You did not end up hospitalized from COVID. Isn't that what Rachel Maddow said and what Biden said and Fauci said, right? They all told us that if you got these vaccines, all these things wouldn't happen to you. And meanwhile, everyone caught COVID anyway. So pointing the finger at China and saying that their Sinopharm and Sinovac vaccines are not as good, and that's why, again, it's just things are lost on people when it comes to following the science. I don't know what to tell them. They got COVID after 5 doses of their vaccine, and yet they're pointing the finger at China saying, well, your vaccine sucks. Your vaccine's the problem. Sinopharm, by the way, and Sinovac are different types of vaccines. They actually took, rather than mRNA, which taught the body to make spike proteins in order to be exposed to them, the Sinovac and Sinopharm vaccines actually exposed the person to the spike protein. So it was a dead version of the spike protein, not a live vaccine, but a dead. It's already been sterilized. And they injected that into people, hoping that their bodies being exposed to the spike protein would then recognize the spike protein if it came across it again, and it would fight it off, and they would have better protection and immunity. That may be true. Again, we don't know the death toll happening in China. We don't know if their version of the vaccine, which is a more traditional version, it very well might have worked a little bit better. It very well might have, for one, at least ensured that the population didn't end up with some of the side effects. But beyond that, we don't know how well it protected maybe against death and severe disease. That is unclear at the moment. Their hospitals are overwhelmed. Their clinics are overwhelmed. The people there are reporting that they cannot get into beds, but that doesn't necessarily mean the people are super sick. Because remember, when COVID started circulating around all these areas where people thought for sure they were never going to get COVID because they locked down and then they wore masks and then they double masked and then they jabbed and then they double jabbed and triple jabbed and they said, I'm definitely not going to get COVID. And then when they did, they ran scared to the hospitals because they thought, oh my gosh, now I've got the deadly disease. So when somebody's afraid, when they've been told, especially in China for 3 years, this is a deadly virus, we're going to do everything we can to stop it from coming here. And they've been told this for 3 years, and now the virus is there and they're all catching it, there's panic. So whether they're really truly sick or not, they're panicking, and they might be showing up to the hospitals out of fear of, oh my gosh, now I got this virus, the thing that the government tried to protect me from for the last 3 years. So now we're seeing that, China is in this. They're dealing with it. They're getting all of their, they're still getting their surge. The government has now sort of loosened up their rhetoric on just zero COVID policy, and they're realizing that they cannot maintain that. They have to open up. They have to allow society to function, and they have to hope that mass, whatever they try to do, inoculation of their population with their Sinovac and Sinopharm vaccines will prevent death and dying. We won't know that until we see some numbers. We're not getting numbers out of China. I would be very curious and interested in those numbers because I would like to see if there was a difference by those real those vaccines that are more of the traditional type versus the type that they rolled out here. I would like to see if there was an actual true difference in the outcomes of those. That would be interesting to find out if we could get that data. So we're probably not going to get it soon, and we're going to have to wait for China to go through its numerous waves. This will not be the first wave. My guess is China's going to have subsequent waves like the rest of the world did when they opened up eventually. They're going to see wave after wave after wave probably for the next 2 to 3 years is what we could probably be expecting coming out of China. All right. We are getting very close to having to end the show here. So I do want to go over just some of the, before we end, I want to go over the conspiracies of 2022 that ended up not being conspiracies at all. if we can do some of those. Do we have time? Can we do that? Do we have a little bit of time? Johnny's nodding his head that we can. We can do it. We only have a couple of minutes left before I have to shut down this show and make way for, I believe Glenn Greenwald is coming on. He might, I think he might have taken a break today because I know a lot of shows are taking some time off, but nonetheless, next week it'll be a 1-hour show on Rumble. You can watch it there and on YouTube for a little bit of it, and then we're going to be posting clips. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the conspiracies of 2022 that ended up not being conspiracies at all. At this point, you know, when it comes to conspiracy theory, if you've been called a conspiracy theorist, it's almost like they're saying you're actually a credible journalist. Conspiracy theorists are the credible ones because most of the conspiracies have ended up being true at this point. So let's go through some of them. Let's start off with COVID claims. So of course, what did they claim during 2022 and really since 2020? That lockdowns are an effective policy to stop the spread. Well, what are we seeing in China? Not really. You know, you can slow it down for a minute. You can run away from it for a second, but eventually one of you is going to have to go outside. And when you do, you're going to catch that virus. They also told us that vaccines are effective and safe and that they stop COVID spread, they stop infection, they stop death, that there are no known side effects. And what did we find out? We find out, in fact, there have been more side effects than they first originally thought when they said that there were none. Then they eventually came out and said, oh, okay, we take it back. There actually is a risk of myocarditis and blood clotting and potentially a whole host of others. They haven't quite gotten to that point yet of admitting whether or not there's any other sort of side effect. But certainly they've now had to backpedal on that. And that was considered a conspiracy theory if you said, no, these things cause some real serious side effects that I don't want to subject myself to. And they, you mean a conspiracy theorist. They also said that unvaccinated people were the ones who were spreading the virus. We found that to be totally and completely not true. That in fact, anyone can spread the virus, that whether that your vaccine doesn't last long when it comes to protection against some moderate protection of slowing the spread. I think the difference was like 6% difference between a person who was unvaccinated and vaccinated on whether or not they would spread the virus. And we also found out that it wore off significantly and pretty quickly. So they've made a lot of claims around COVID. Of course, they talked about different sort of therapies. They said, oh, if you believed in this therapy, then you are a conspiracy theorist, only for us to later find out from numerous clinical trials that those therapies were in fact effective. Some trials showing them to be more effective than others. 100% of the trials showed them to be effective, except for the really biased trials. Again, I have to be careful what I'm saying right now because I'm still on YouTube. So I'm talking in code. So you just have to forgive me on that. This is why next week when you join the Rumble show, you're going to get the uncensored version of the Kim Iverson show. You're going to get the real information, the guests, all the things I can't say here. You're going to get there. So be sure to start subscribing over on Rumble and getting that full show so you get all of the truthful information. I'm really excited. I've got a whole host of people I'm bringing on the show and a whole host of topics I'm going to be talking about that I've been having to kind of gag myself here over on YouTube in order to talk about. Let's talk about Ukraine, some of the claims there. There were a lot of different conspiracy theories that if you believed these things, you were a conspiracy theorist. If you said these things, one of the claims is that the missile strike in Poland that was originally blamed on Russia, if you remember that, they said, oh, Russia struck Poland. And they were almost escalating us. This was the biggest probably conspiracy theory lie that they told us was that, you know, you're a conspiracy theorist if you didn't think Russia did this, when in fact, if you said Russia did it, then you were, I'm sorry, I'm saying this wrong. If you said Russia didn't do it, you were a conspiracy theorist. They were saying Russia totally did it. That's what the Ukrainians were trying to say. But the truth was it wasn't. It was actually Ukrainian missiles that were given to them by NATO that actually struck and ended up hitting Poland. And it was anti-missile technology that ended up hitting Poland. It wasn't Russia after all. So we didn't have to go to World War III, it turns out. Also, if you remember this one, that there was the Ghost of Kiev claim. There was this mythical aircraft that was going around shooting down Russians. In reality, there wasn't one of these. They claimed this. There was images from video games that it turned out. You know, all of that was actually kind of fake. They also claimed that that there were some soldiers that were defending Snake Island, and they said, go F yourself to the submarine that came up that was Russian. That ended up being not exactly a truthful story. I still see that one circulating around. Let's move on to the Hunter Biden laptop. So the laptop, of course, they said was not real. This was a conspiracy theory. How dare you actually believe in this thing? This was brought forward by Russians. They said Russians somehow put software, they hacked into the laptop. They put software in there, or they told a bunch of lies, and then it ended up in this shop, and all of that was fake. And that ended up not being fake at all. Just quickly, because we're running out of time here, I'm just going to talk about JFK. That's another one. They said you're a big, they've been saying this for years. If you're a conspiracy theorist, if you think anyone other than Oswald killed JFK, then you are a total and complete conspiracy theorist. And you are a total whack job. And now we're finding out from documents that are being released that maybe it's not such a wacky claim after all to say that the CIA was involved in the assassination of a sitting American president. That is a big deal. We still don't have all of the documents on that. We only have 97% of the JFK documents. So what must be in those last 3% must be pretty bad for them not to want to release them to us. That must be pretty damning, pretty incriminating. So now it turns out all of these years, the people that were conspiracy theorists and were considered whack jobs for thinking anything other than the state-sponsored narrative about JFK's death, it turns out those people are not actually wacky conspiracy theorists after all. UFOs, this was another one, right? This was one of the big claims that for years, you were totally nuts if you believed that there were some unidentified flying objects flying around. You just were making stuff up. You're watching too many movies. You're crazy. And now we find that there's congressional hearings on these unidentified objects. They don't call them UFOs. What is it that they call them? Do we know that the term? UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon, is what they're calling them now, rather than UFOs. I think they should have just kept the name UFO, because I think it's more, they don't want to do that because they don't want to make it sound like all those people who believed in UFOs are actually maybe credible and actually had some truth to their story. So instead they change it to UAP. Like, no, you believed in UFOs. The government now is acknowledging that there is such a thing as a UAP, but not a UFO. Same thing, by the way. So those are just some of the conspiracy theories in 2022 that ended up not being totally conspiracies at all that were uncovered. We'll go deeper into that subject, I'm sure, as time goes on throughout this next year, because there's going to be so many more that they're calling conspiracy theories that are not actually conspiracy theories at all. They've done this over and over. I get called a conspiracy theorist inside of legacy media, the Daily Beast, or wherever, saying, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. And then you point and say, well, what conspiracy are you claiming I'm making that's actually a theory and not reality? I would love to know. Inquiring minds would like to know. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching the Kim Iverson Show, the special edition. I want to check and see if there's any text messages that came through. We're still testing the software. I do have a few that have come through here. I'm just going to read these off real quickly, and then we're going to end the show. Thank you guys for participating. Thanks for texting into the show. Thanks for being here. Next week's going to be really great to have you guys here. All right, this one, I don't know who these come from, and I'm not going to read your telephone numbers out. So unless you put your name on it, I guess I should have told you to do that. Put your name and where you're from in the text so I know who this is from. But I got this one. Love the show. Santos should resign, although we know he won't. He lied specifically to obtain the power he now has and won't give that up. No more right or left. Make independence great again. Woo! All right, this one. Love you, Kim, but going to disagree on Santos, mainly because the Dems always circle those wagons, that if Santos was one of the lefties, they'd have his back 100%. Maybe the GOP needs to learn to circle the wagons once in a while instead of rolling over and playing dead. I am not in favor of deception whatsoever, but sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. Can't wait for the debut, Kim. Thank you. Oh, Carl from Locals. Thank you. Texting a link to a study worth looking into. I can't click on links, but I appreciate that. I appreciate the attempt, but I can't click on links. Went to a party with George a few years ago, and he's a total fraud. I'm really surprised he made it this far. Also, didn't get the vibe he was gay, more like using the gay angle. Oh my gosh, what if he lied about that? I mean, he lied about everything else. So... you say, and this was an LCR party. I don't know what that is. What's an LCR party? Is that something I should know about? Do you know what that is, Johnny? An LCR party? Okay. Also, what happened in the midterms? I don't understand the failure to punish Biden for the migrant invasion. Frustrating. The Hill got rid of you. The two people there now. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Hi, Kim. In Santos, New York, Long Island District, tribalism rules. To be Jewish there is to be Republican. To be Jewish and work for Goldman Sachs is next to royalty. To then evoke 9/11 and the Holocaust is next to sainthood. Of course he'd win. Okay. I can kind of see how that works. All right, let me just get to a couple more. This one. Are you kidding me? This guy's going to fit right in. In 20 years, he'll still be in Congress lining his pockets. So take note to how much he's worth now, because he'll certainly be lying about that once he's a millionaire. And let's see here. Love the show, Kim. George Santos also ran in 2020. It's amazing that the New York Dems did not have their opposition research ready until it was too late. You should talk more Idaho politics. People do not know how fascinating it is. Jesse. So, Jesse, you might be in Idaho, right? Idaho politics are extremely fascinating. There's actually one politician in particular, one guy who keeps trying to run named Ahmed Bundy, and he's interesting. He's an interesting character. Totally nuts, but interesting. And maybe not totally nuts. I don't know. I'm going to watch what I say here. So, all right, here's one. Keep the background on the darker side, Kim. So they want the darker background here. Okay. Love today's background with the dark blue building, but don't go back to yellow or baby blue. It's a nightmare. Oh, it's a nighttime show, not a nightmare. Nighttime show, not a daytime show. You're doing a great job. I'm loving everything you're doing. You've really stepped up your game. Thanks, Tara and guys. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. This is great. And all right, I'm going to go ahead. And next time you can text into the show, I'll let you know in advance. Sometimes what we're going to be able to do is actually then, if you text into the show, we can then text you back to call in, and we'd like to actually get you on the show to talk. That is what we're going to be working on for the Rumble live stream, which is another reason why you want to join. Subscribe over there, tune in over there, because you're going to be able to be on the show having a conversation with me about some of these topics. So we're looking at a new year of 2023 with a lot of fun, a lot of interesting things. Really excited about the growth of this show. Really excited to join the Rumble platform. The Rumble exclusives right now, there's Russell Brand, Glenn Greenwald, and myself, who are the Rumble exclusive shows. And we are all very excited to be a part of the free speech platform that really will let us talk about the subjects the way they should be talked about, talk to the people that we should be talking to, and without being gagged by all of these different restrictions that are really just restrictions on the truth and seeking the truth. So thank you so much for watching. That is it. I am out of here until 2023. So I will see you guys next year. Thanks for watching.